Most people think pressure points are some kind of secret cheat code, a hidden shortcut that shuts down an attacker with a single touch. Movies show it, internet videos promise it, and a lot of beginners believe it. But in a real street fight, pressure points can be either your biggest advantage, or the biggest mistake you ever make. Some of them can disable a limb instantly. Others can overwhelm the nervous system with unbearable pain. And a few of them, when used the wrong way, can create consequences you cannot take back. Before we go any further, let me ask you something important. Which city are you watching from? The effectiveness of pressure points changes a lot depending on where you live, the type of aggression people use, and the kind of danger you might face in your area. Stay with me until the end, because the most dangerous pressure point of all is not the one you think it is. It is not hidden behind the jaw or under the ribs or near the neck. The deadliest one only becomes clear in the final part of this video, and once you understand it, you will never look at pressure points the same way again. Let's start with the truth behind why these so-called weak spots work, and why most people fail miserably when trying to use them under real violence. The idea of pressure points has always fascinated people. There is something almost mystical about the possibility of shutting down an aggressor with nothing more than a precise touch, a small strike, or a quick squeeze. In training rooms, instructors show how certain spots on the body react instantly to pressure, sending jolts of pain through the nerves or forcing the body into a reflex it cannot control. And in that controlled environment, it all looks convincing. It feels like a shortcut to victory. But the street does not behave like a demonstration. The human body does not behave the same way under fear. And pressure points do not react the same way when the world around you is collapsing into adrenaline and panic. Inside the gym, pressure points are easy to find. The partner stands still. The lighting is good. The atmosphere is calm. The body is relaxed, breathing normally, muscles loose. When someone touches a sensitive area, the reaction is immediate and predictable. But a real fight transforms the body in ways that completely change how these points respond. The first problem is tension. The moment fear hits, the entire body tightens. Muscles contract instinctively, especially around the neck, shoulders, and midsection. Many of the most effective pressure points depend on relaxed tissue to expose nerve clusters and sensitive areas. When everything stiffens, those same points become harder to access and far less responsive. Another issue is chaotic movement. A person in a street fight rarely stays still long enough for precise targeting. They swing, stumble, rush forward, grab clothing, and move unpredictably. Trying to find a small, specific point on a body that is thrashing around is nothing like practicing on a calm partner. Even experienced practitioners struggle to land a clean strike on a precise spot when both people are moving wildly. And then there is the biggest misunderstanding. Pain does not stop everyone. Some people respond instantly. Others become more aggressive when pain hits them. Alcohol, drugs, fear, adrenaline, and mental state all change the way pressure points affect a person. A point that drops someone in a demonstration might do nothing to someone who is overwhelmed by emotion or intoxication. Still, pressure points do have real power when used correctly, especially the ones that trigger involuntary reactions rather than relying purely on pain. Certain areas of the body can disrupt breathing, collapse posture, or weaken a limb instantly. The problem is not that pressure points are useless. The problem is that most people try to use them without understanding the conditions they depend on. This is where the danger really begins. Someone may enter a street fight believing they can shut down an attacker with a single motion, only to realize too late that the body under stress does not react the way they expect. That false confidence can place them directly in harm's way. But even with all these limitations, some pressure points still work extremely well in real confrontations, especially a few that provoke powerful reflexes rather than relying on the attacker feeling pain. And the next part of the video reveals exactly why those specific areas react so violently. What makes certain pressure points so powerful is not pain. It is reflex. The human body is wired with automatic responses that activate long before the mind understands what is happening. Some areas react like electrical switches, causing muscles to contract, heads to jerk, knees to buckle, or hands to release whatever they are holding. These reactions happen because the nervous system has no choice. It is programmed to protect itself instantly. Take the side of the jaw, for example. A small burst of pressure there can send a shock through the facial nerve, forcing the head to turn sharply and disrupting the attacker's vision for a moment. This has nothing to do with emotional pain tolerance. It is simply a direct connection to a nerve highway. The same concept applies to the base of the skull, the soft tissue under the ear, and the cluster of nerves at the side of the neck. These areas trigger movements the attacker cannot control, even if they are filled with adrenaline or anger. But the truth is more complicated once the fight becomes real. In a violent encounter, the attacker is rarely calm, balanced, or stationary. They might be leaning forward, yelling, grabbing your clothes, shaking with rage, or moving in ways that make it extremely difficult to find precise targets. The idea of calmly reaching for a small nerve point on someone who is thrashing around is unrealistic for most people. Still, there are situations where these reflex-based points work with surprising reliability. One example is when an aggressor grabs your shirt, your wrist, or your jacket. Their arm is fixed in place for a moment, and certain points along the inside of the bicep or just above the elbow can force the fingers to release involuntarily. Another situation happens when someone is pushing aggressively or leaning their weight forward. Certain points on the clavicle or at the front of the shoulder can collapse their posture instantly. None of this requires fine accuracy, it simply requires knowing where the body reacts the strongest. But even these reliable reactions come with a hidden risk. A person who loses control of their own body for a moment may panic, and panic often turns into rage. Many street attackers respond to sudden discomfort by escalating their aggression instead of backing down. A pressure point that weakens their grip may also trigger a rush of emotion that makes them come back harder, faster, and less predictably. This reality creates an uncomfortable truth. Pressure points that look impressive in demonstrations become unpredictable the moment real fear enters the situation. Some points will work even better under stress. Others will fail completely. And the person using them needs to understand this difference, or they risk poking a hornet's nest instead of neutralizing a threat. But pain and reflex are only one side of the equation. Pressure points can do far more than hurt or force a reaction. Some of them can disorient the attacker, disrupt their balance, or shut down the strength of an arm or leg temporarily. These effects are subtle, powerful, and far more useful in real violence. And that is exactly what we explore in the next part. There is a side of pressure points that most people never consider. They think everything is about hurting the attacker. They imagine sharp pain, sudden weakness, or a shocking jolt that forces the aggressor to back off. But pain is only one of the things these points can create. Some of the most powerful ones do not hurt in a traditional sense. They cause confusion. They steal balance. They weaken a limb for a few precious seconds. They interrupt the rhythm of an attack and create an opening where none existed before. In a real street fight, confusion is often more valuable than pain. When the human body loses orientation, even for a brief moment, the attacker's entire plan collapses. The eyes lose focus. The steps become unstable. The arms stop coordinating with the body. Everything feels out of rhythm, and that break in rhythm is sometimes the only chance someone has to escape safely. Certain regions of the body are connected to clusters of nerves that influence balance and coordination. When these areas are pressed, struck, or squeezed at the right moment, they disrupt more than physical comfort. They disrupt the attacker's ability to think clearly. A sharp touch behind the ear can create a burst of dizziness. Pressure near the top of the chest can collapse posture without causing traditional pain. Even a quick strike to the side of the ribs can interrupt breathing long enough to make the attacker instinctively back away. These reactions have nothing to do with toughness. Even someone who is angry, intoxicated, or full of adrenaline can lose their balance or feel their legs weaken for a moment. The body is reacting to internal wiring, not emotion. And that is why these effects can be so valuable in survival situations. A confused attacker is a delayed attacker. A delayed attacker is vulnerable. But there is a complication hidden inside this advantage. When a person becomes disoriented during a fight, they often panic. Their movements turn wild and unpredictable. They swing harder. They shout louder. They push without direction. They turn their fear into aggression. Instead of backing off, they may rush forward blindly, creating a situation even harder to manage than before. This is where pressure points become unpredictable. A point that weakens an arm might make the attacker grab with the other. A point that causes dizziness might make them stumble toward you instead of away. A point that disrupts breathing might make them explode with desperate energy. You cannot predict how a specific human will respond to fear, especially when they were already unstable before the confrontation began. Even so, there are pressure points that remain reliable no matter how chaotic the situation becomes. Not because they depend on accuracy, but because they are located in areas that almost every attacker exposes when they move aggressively. These points are not delicate. They do not require finesse. They are built for real violence where everything is shaking, loud, and fast. And in the next part, we go straight into those, the pressure points that actually work in the chaos of the street. There is a moment in every street fight when precision disappears. The world becomes loud, fast, and unpredictable. Hands slip, feet stumble. People grab anything within reach. And in this environment, most pressure points lose their usefulness because the movements required to reach them simply do not survive the storm. But a few points do. These are the ones that do not rely on flawless accuracy. They depend on instinctive movement, natural openings and reactions that happen even when the fight is collapsing into complete disorder. One of the most practical areas is the collarbone. When someone pushes, grabs, or tries to rush forward, the collarbone is almost always exposed. A sharp push or strike to the soft space just beneath it forces the body to recoil instantly. The reaction is not about pain alone. It is about posture. The shoulders collapse inward. The chest compresses. The attacker's weight shifts at the wrong moment, interrupting their forward drive and breaking the momentum of their aggression. Another reliable area is the neck, not the delicate points that require precise angles, but the broader regions where nerves run close to the surface. When someone is leaning in, shouting, grabbing clothing, or trying to overpower you with their weight, the sides of the neck are exposed naturally. Even a quick compression with the forearm or a sudden shove with the hand can trigger a surge of discomfort that forces the head to turn or the body to withdraw instinctively. In a chaotic fight, that moment of involuntary retreat can create the space needed to escape. The ribs are another surprising opportunity. When an attacker swings wildly, their arms open their sides without realizing it. A firm strike to the lower ribs or the sensitive space between the muscles disrupts breathing instantly. This reaction is the same for almost everyone, no matter how aggressive or intoxicated they are. Breathing is instinct. When the body struggles to inhale, the brain becomes overwhelmed, and the attacker's movements slow just enough to give you a chance to break away. Even the inside of the arm, often overlooked, becomes valuable. When someone grabs your wrist, your clothes, or your throat, the inside of their arm becomes exposed automatically. Pressing or striking the sensitive tissue there can force their hand to release without requiring precision. It is a natural reaction built into the way nerves protect the limb. These are the pressure points that matter when the world is falling apart. Not the small, delicate ones that require perfect placement. The ones that line up with how real violence actually looks: rushed, emotional, unstable, unpredictable. They give you a sliver of control in the middle of movement you cannot predict. They give you space when space does not exist. And above all, they give you time, which is the most valuable resource in a confrontation where survival, not domination, is the real goal. But even these powerful points are not the true focus of this video. There is something bigger than pain, reflex, or instinct. Something no one talks about, even though it determines whether pressure points save your life or destroy it. And that final truth is the one thing every viewer needs to understand before ever relying on pressure points in a real fight. People love to talk about secret spots on the body. They want to believe there is a place you can touch that ends a fight instantly, like flipping a switch. But the most dangerous pressure point of all is not hidden under the jaw or tucked behind the ear or sitting between the ribs. The real danger comes from something far less mystical and far more powerful. The moment when a person's will to fight collapses. This is the pressure point that matters in a street fight. Not a nerve, not a muscle, not a soft spot. It is the break in the attacker's intention, the instant when their mind loses the desire to continue. Every physical pressure point discussed so far exists for the same purpose: to create a window to escape, a window to move, a window to breathe. But none of those windows exist unless the attacker's focus is disrupted. That disruption is the real shutdown, the one that makes all the difference between surviving and being overwhelmed. Pain alone does not always create it. Some people become more violent when they feel pain. Others barely register it. Reflexes help, but reflexes are momentary. They only interrupt movement for a heartbeat. Dizziness helps, but disorientation fades quickly if the person is desperate enough. What truly stops someone is when their confidence shatters, when the sudden shock of losing control pulls them out of the emotional wave that started the fight in the first place. This collapse can happen in many ways. A strike to an unexpected area. A sudden loss of balance. A moment where the attacker cannot breathe properly. A reflex they did not expect. A grip that slips out of their hands. Anything that makes them realize, even for a moment, that they are not in control. The human mind does not like losing control. And when the attacker feels that loss sharply, their aggression hesitates. Their focus cracks. Their momentum falters. That hesitation is the real pressure point. It is the moment you escape. It is the moment you run. It is the moment you survive. This is why pressure points are not toys. They are not secrets from movies. They are tools that must be used with clarity and responsibility. If you expect them to end a fight instantly, you may walk straight into danger believing in something that only works under perfect conditions. If you understand them as tools to create opportunity, then they become far more practical and far safer to depend on. A real street fight is not about domination. It is not about showing technique, proving skill, or demonstrating knowledge. It is about living through a moment you never wanted to be in. Martial arts are powerful, but they must be understood through the lens of survival, not fantasy. Pressure points are no different. The deadliest pressure point will always be the attacker's intention, and your goal is not to destroy their body but to break their focus long enough to escape. The body reacts, the nerves respond, the reflexes fire, but it is the mind that ultimately decides whether the fight continues. When you understand this, you stop looking for secret weak spots and start understanding what real self-defense truly is. And that understanding is what keeps you alive.